Hello dear friends, I hope you enjoy listening to the story and relax. Today the MC invites you to continue listening, the story of the evil president's little wife. Author Nguyen Ngoc Cinnamon. Chapter 16. Anger. Lee Thien Vy smiled. Mr. Han, it seems that you are not sincere, then it seems that Lee is unlucky, please take your leave. That's it, Mr. Lee and Mr. Han have always been like that. What I said just now was not to mock you, let's get started. Secretary Hoang quickly said. Han Thien Lan frowned. This contract is the most beneficial for you guys. I think Mr. Lee is not that stupid, but if you want to return then our Tin Hong door seems too ordinary. So that those who want to come in can come in, and those who want to go out can go out. Mr. Han, just say it directly. Lee Thien Vy said. Han Thien Lan stood up and smiled coldly. I want this to be the last time I see you guys. Then he walked out of the room. Everyone also walked out holding documents. Lee Thien Vy punched the table hard. So arrogant. Really has temperament. Lee Huyen Do said. His eyes became sinister. Lee Thien Vy couldn't let this time go to waste like that. Lee Huyen Do said, Brother, I will help you. How can you help? Try to play your role well. Lee Huyen Do said, You wait. I will use the beauty trick. Maison's previous development was partly thanks to Lee Huyen Do's tricks. She did not believe that Han Thien Lan could pass this hurdle. Han Thien Lan went back to the office. Secretary Hoang smelled a dangerous smell and did not dare to step inside, so he had to go back to his room to wait. But there are some people who are not afraid of death, like Ngoc Nhan Nhi. She limply walked into his room. General Han, is there something that makes you angry? Let me help you relieve it? Han Thien Lan took out a cigarette, lit it and slowly released white smoke. Go away, I said. Ngoc Nhan Nhi cooed. You left her at home for 2 days. Do you know how lonely she is? Are 2 days so lonely that you have to look for a man on the street? He asked. Ngoc Nhan Nhi's face turned pale. She was startled. What? What are you saying? Dirty, go away from me. I said. Ngoc Nhan Nhi quickly walked out of the room. When she didn't come in, she was angry to death. At this time, Hak Bok Lam called, Tit. Tit. He put out his cigarette and answered the phone. There are new products, very delicious, come here. Han Thien Lan said. One day you will die from exhaustion. Quickly find Mok Van for me, don't let me take that thing away from you. Han Thien Lan, if you have a star, you don't need a chef. If you don't like deep Mok Van, I'll find it. Han Thien Lan looked at his watch, stood up. Nothing else, I'll hang up. On the other side, Hak Bok Lam is sharing a room with 3 beautiful women. 2 in each other's arms, and there is a waiter below. Han Thien Lan, dare to say that you will be exhausted, I will prove it to you. He drove back to the villa. Ngoc Nhan Nhi was sitting at the dining table. He looked at the housekeeper. Where is she? The housekeeper said, the lady is upstairs. She hasn't felt well since the afternoon so she slept up there. He didn't say anything, turned to look at Ngoc Nhan Nhi. Why hasn't Deep Mok Nhan done anything to chase her away? Did he misunderstand her? Ngoc Nhan Nhi, after taking a shower tonight, come into my room. After hearing this, Ngoc Nhan Nhi's eyes lit up. Mr. Han, do you have to say it so loudly? People are very shy. The housekeeper looked at her, shook his head and went into the kitchen. These days, there are all kinds of people. Han Thien Lan said nothing more, he walked upstairs. When he passed her room, he saw her diligently drawing something, so he slowly walked into her room. Mok Nhan was lying face down on the bed. When she heard the noise, she immediately turned towards the door. Seeing him walking towards her, she quickly sat up. Why don't you go downstairs to eat? His voice was cold. Mok Nhan stepped down. I'm not hungry. He looked at the blueprints on the bed. Do you use these to kill time? Mok Nian bent down to gather the papers. Han Thien Lan slowly walked towards her. Mok Nian bit her lip and looked at him with sparkling eyes. Today, I'm not well, we can't. Are you just thinking about that? Dirty, he said and went out. Mok Nian heard the last two words he left and her heart ached a bit. This man saw humiliating her as joy. As for you, this is a huge hurt for you. At night, Mok Nian walked out of the bathroom and saw him lying on the bed. She stood still and looked at him. Han Thien Lan half closed her eyes and said nothing. General Han, are you in there? Nook Nian Nhi said. Han Thien Lan was still silent. Mok Nian went to open the door for Nook Nian Nhi. She walked slowly inside. As she passed, she deliberately knocked her shoulder, causing Mok Nian to almost fall to the floor. President Han, let's go back to the room. Are you going to stay here? Her voice was coy. To men it was seduction, but to Mok Nian it sounded disgusting. Han Thien Lan said nothing, pulled her over and pushed her down on the bed. Mok Nian turned back to look at them, then opened the door and walked out of the room. Stop. His hands were groping her body, but his eyes were still following Mok Nian. Mok Nian stood in place. General Han, I think I should give you 2 private space. If you step out of the room now, I will immediately make you regret it, I said. Mok Nian turned back to look at him. Don't be too harsh. In the end, you will let me go. Stay and watch your husband share the same bed with another woman. Mok Nian frowned. You're crazy. Deep Mok Nian, is your plan to chase people away this time slow? Why did Nook Nian Nhi stay here for so long this time? You're not quick to use your tricks to chase her away. Mok Nian smiled. Whatever you think, I'll go out first. If that's the case, how about I give you a hand? Mok Nian looked at him. What do you mean? While Nook Nian Nhi was immersed in pleasure, he raised the pistol and aimed at her forehead. Mok Nian ran over. Han Thien Lan, she was called by you. You want me to chase her, right? Okay, tomorrow I will chase her for you to see. Now let her go. Nook Nian Nhi was so scared that she couldn't say anything. She looked at Mok Nian for help. It's late, she deserves to die. Dare to betray me, despicable, treacherous. Don't, Mr. Han. I was wrong. Nook Nian Nhi tried to push the gun away. Ah. Nook Nian Nhi opened her eyes wide. Her forehead was bleeding, lying on her bed. Mok Nian covered her ears in fear and backed away. Han Thien Lan, you're crazy. Chapter 17. Anger. Han Thien Lan stood up and walked towards her. His eyes were cold. Are you scared? Mok Nian stepped back, encountered a cold wall. He raised his gun towards her. Deep Mok Nian, I haven't committed any crime against you, yet you took away my Mok Van. You see how I keep your life. Have I been very kind to you at this hour? A tear fell from the corner of her eye. Why was it all because of her sister, and she had to bear it all? This man is a devil, the most cruel devil. Han Thien Lan, you will never know anything. I think you are very stupid. Han Thien Lan looked at her. Shut up. Do you have the right to say that to me? Deep Mok Nian, you really deserve to die. After saying that, he held the gun firmly, his hand slowly moving. Mok Nian closed her eyes in despair. Just kill me. I've had enough of you guys. Dang, there was a round hole behind her wall. Mok Nian covered her ears in panic, unable to breathe. You want to die? I won't give you satisfaction. You have to endure my torment and torture until you can't live, even if you die. After saying that, he coldly walked out. Mok Nian sat down on the floor and looked at Nook Nian Nhi lying on the bed, her slender body trembling, unable to bear this. Han Thien Lan's people came in to clean up Nook Nian Nhi's body. The housekeeper went upstairs to arrange for her to go to another room. At midnight, Mok Nien dreamed of a scene at night and was drenched in sweat. Suddenly she woke up. Unable to forget that terrifying image, she turned on the light at the head of the bed and sat huddled in a corner. A weak girl like her had to constantly witness these scenes. The next morning, Han Thien Lan woke up early to go to work as usual. She went downstairs to talk to the gardener. "Madam, don't touch them. The flowers here all have thorns. Be careful of getting hurt," the gardener told her. Mok Nien smiled. "It's okay. By the way, when did the flowers here come from?" she asked. The gardener replied, Since before my grandparents passed away, this was my favorite flower, so he forced us to take care of it carefully." Mok Nien nodded. Although he was so cold and cruel, he was actually very affectionate. His parents in heaven would definitely be touched by him. Mok Nien helped them catch the worms, but unfortunately she was pricked by the thorns. Her hand bled a little. The thorns stabbed straight into the back of her hand without any mercy. At night, Han Thien Lan came home from work. He went to the bathroom to change clothes and then went downstairs to eat. Mok Nien helped everyone bring food. "Madam, just leave it there and we'll do it for you." Mok Nien smiled, a dazzling, holy smile. "It's okay, I can do it." He looked at her from afar. Was that smile genuine or not? Or is it just a lie? This girl has so many things he doesn't know about her. Han Thien Lan sat down at the dining table. His eyes accidentally saw the back of her hand. "What's wrong?" He suddenly grabbed her hand. Mok Nien frowned in pain. The housekeeper came over and said, "The lady helped everyone garden this morning. She caught worms in the flowers that the lady likes and got injured." His eyes suddenly turned cold. "Who let them touch them?" Deep Mok Nien, "What right do you have to ask to do that? Just do your duty well, don't be so fake." After saying that, he let go of her hand, stood up and coldly walked out. Mok Nien was so hurt and sad that she shed tears. She just wanted to help him. The housekeeper walked over and rubbed her shoulder. It's okay. Don't cry anymore." Han Thien Lan drove to the bar. He actually wasn't angry about her touching those countless flowers. What made him most angry was that she let herself get hurt. But for some reason he just expressed it. "Contrary to my heart. Hey, what's wrong with you today? Do you need me to find someone for you?" Hak Bok Lam caressed the woman next to him with one hand and asked with the other hand holding a glass of wine. Han Thien Lan had drunk quite a lot. He was afraid of his own feelings. Why did he have some pity for that woman? "Shut up," I said. Hak Bok Lam shook his head, stood up, hugged the woman and left. "Okay. I'm going to have fun with the women. If you're in need, just tell me, I have a few left for you." Han Thien Lan smiled coldly and continued drinking. Mok Nien cried for a while. Her eyes were swollen. She continued to draw diligently. At this time, Han Thien Lan had returned drunk and went straight to her room. When Mok Nien saw him, she was a little wary. He staggered to her side. "Go back to your room quickly, you're drunk, and I still have today." He suddenly lay down on the bed and hugged her. Mok Nien screamed and fell into his arms. The papers flew lightly into the air and then fell to the floor next to the bed. Han Thien Lan, what are you doing? Let me go quickly. She weakly pushed him away. Han Thien Lan hugged her tighter, his strong breath mixed with wine on her face. He spoke softly. Don't let yourself get hurt again in the future. Her heart vibrated strongly. The barrier she tried to build would collapse because of one of his words? Impossible, she can't. But he was determined not to let her go. Mok Nien had to lie quietly, listening to his heartbeat and steady breathing. She slowly fell asleep without realizing it. Chapter 18. See you the next morning. Han Thien Lan woke up. His head hurt like a hammer. He frowned and turned around, suddenly discovering Mok Nian's soft body curled up in his arms. He gently lifted her head and placed it on the pillow, then stood up. When he got off the bed, Mok Nian gently opened her eyes to look at him. Han Thien Lan looked at her designs lying on the floor. He gently bent down to pick them up. This work was beautiful, simple but eye-catching. He looked at it and then looked at her lying on the bed. He took a pen and wrote on the corner of the paper. Take these drawings to the company at 9 o'clock this morning, I will help you. After writing, he placed it on the pillow next to her and walked out. At this moment, Mok Nian opened her eyes and took the paper. She looked at each of his majestic handwriting, the corners of her mouth slightly raised. Then she got out of bed and went to the bathroom. Mok Nian dressed neatly and went downstairs. Uncle, is he at work? Yes. The butler looked at her and smiled. Mok Nian, come down and have breakfast. The butler said. Mok Nian went downstairs to have breakfast and then changed clothes to go to his company. She asked the villa's driver to take her there. As soon as Han Thien Lan arrived at the company, he told Secretary Hoang, see Maison Company, 9 o'clock this morning. Secretary Hoang nodded. Yes. Mok Nian went into the company. This was her first time coming here. This company was so big and tall, more than she could imagine. Hello, please let me see Mr. Han. Mok Nian said. She was led to his room. Mok Nian went in and he still worked silently. Because there were still 30 minutes until 9 o'clock. Mok Nian sat down on the chair and took out a magazine to read, but her eyes were always glued to him. She looked at him for a long moment. This man is really so attractive to others. He is so beautiful when he works. Mr. Han, Mr. Li and Miss Li have arrived. Secretary Hoang came in and said. Han Thien Lan then put down the documents in his hand and walked towards her. He sat down next to her. Li Thien Vy and Li Huyandu walked in. He looked at Han Thien Lan. I didn't expect President Han to proactively invite us here today. At this time, Li Thien Vy also noticed Mok Nian next to him. Mok Nian saw him and was a bit surprised but then calmed down. She smiled and greeted him. Li Huyandu was still standing there looking at him. Han Thien Lan saw them looking at each other like that and suddenly hugged her shoulders. A little introduction. This is Deep Mok Nian, my wife. Both bodies suddenly stopped, but Mok Nian's heart was beating so fast that it wanted to jump out. Baby. Let me introduce to you, this is Li Thien Vy, General Director of Maison Group. This is Li Huyandu, representative model. Such an intimate calling made Mok Nian a bit unfamiliar. She slightly moved away from him. Everyone sat down. A female secretary brought tea in and then left. Han Thien Lan said. This time it's not my company that wants to cooperate with your company. But I want her to cooperate with your company. Although Mok Nian has no work experience, her works are very good. Li Thien Vy looked at Mok Nian, who was obediently sitting next to Han Thien Lan, and smiled. Lady Han, did you bring those works here? Mok Nian nodded and took out 3 works that she had recently made, and Li Thien Vy looked through them. Indeed, Mrs. Han. Her lines can be so detailed and eye-catching. Mok Nian breathed a sigh of relief. Han Thien Lan continued. She signed a 3-month contract. I don't want her to come to your company, after all. This is because of her passion, so I let her go. I know, young Master Han is so rich, how can he let his wife suffer? But sometimes we need to meet to discuss. Hearing that was enough for Han Thien Lan to know that he was trying to find ways to meet Mok Nian. Knowing that in advance, he wouldn't have let the 2 sides meet for the first time. He hugged her. It's unfortunate that my wife met you and the press found out about it. I'm afraid it's not very good. Li Huyan-du looked at his actions and felt a little jealous. This perfect man should belong to her. Mok Nian knew she had no say in this matter. She just silently followed his arrangements. As a result, she signed a 3-month contract with the Maison Company. During these 3 months, she had to submit to the Maison 3 requested products. This product must be loved by everyone when it comes to the market. Li Thien Vy and Li Huyan-du left. He also returned to his desk. Mok Nian held her book bag and walked towards him. Thank you. He still didn't say anything, just continued his work. Mok Nian bit her lip and stood there awkwardly. If there's nothing else, I'll leave first. He raised his head to look at her. Deep Mok Nian, I told you first, Li Thien Vy doesn't have as much money as me, so don't use any more tricks. Her shoulders trembled slightly. Mok Nian turned around in frustration. He had insulted her so easily. Han Thien Lan, you are too much. She complained in a low voice. Han Thien Lan looked at her leaving like that and felt a little pity, but he couldn't do that. She was the one who ruined his happiness. He wouldn't let her have the right to live peacefully. My hand holding the pen suddenly tightened. Mok Van, why haven't you returned yet? Chapter 19. Drugged Mok Nian returned to the villa. The housekeeper looked at her swollen eyes and asked worriedly, Mok Nian, what's wrong? Why are your eyes so swollen? Mok Nian turned her face away from her grandmother's gaze. She smiled. It's okay, because I had so much fun today that I cried. No matter how happy you are. Don't cry like that, the butler said. Mok Nian nodded. Yes, I won't cry anymore. I'll go to my room and rest for a while. Yeah. Remember to come down for dinner later. Yes, she said, then went to the bathroom to change clothes. Han Thien Lan worked until the evening before leaving when Secretary Hoang opened the car door for him. General Han. Tomorrow I have a business trip to France. Han Thien Lan leaned his head back on the chair, his thin lips slightly opened. I know. Let's drive to Fantasy Village. Yes. Secretary Hoang quickly drove to the bar. Han Thien Lan came in. Why has Black White Blue been hit by the wind today and this time hasn't come yet? He sat in his seat as usual, took out his phone and called Hak Bok Lam. Where are you? Hak Bok Lam opened his mouth to eat the woman's grape, smiled and said, if you miss me. Why are you looking for me? But I'm still busy right now. If you want to see me, wait another 15 minutes. Why are you so weak these days? Just 15 minutes? Han Thien Lan's voice was full of sarcasm. What Black White Lam hates most is anyone who dares to criticize him for being weak. Fuck. Han Thien Lan hung up, put the phone on the table, and the waiter brought him wine as usual. At this time, Li Huyan-du was wearing a red dress, with a cutout at the back. Half of her chest was exposed, and she walked towards him. General Han, are you sitting here alone? Let me help you relax. Han Thien Lan placed a hand on her thigh. I heard that foreigners are very open-minded, but I didn't expect it to be like that. Li Huyan-du leaned close to his ear, caressing his chest. People are only open to you. Han Thien Lan smiled coldly. I didn't expect that Miss Li, who came to China for the first time, could be so fluent in Chinese and know this place. It's all because of you. She bravely sat on his lap, her hand caressing the back of his neck. Han Thien Lan pushed her away in disgust. I hope Miss Li has dignity. What are you pretending to be? I know it all. While he wasn't paying attention, she lightly picked at her nails, and a little white powder fell into his wineglass. Li Huyan-du sat aside to wait for the results. Han Thien Lan still had no expression. He raised his glass of wine and drank it all in one gulp. Li Huyan-du caressed his back. How do you feel about me? Dirty. She smiled. Dirty or not, you'll want it later. Just wait and see. Now, can we talk a little about the contract? He frowned slightly. His body gradually heated up, his little brother was already stirring. He grabbed her restless arm. What did you put inside? Li Huyandu smiled, took his hand and placed it on her chest. Aphrodisiac, doesn't it feel bad? He pulled out a pistol, despicable. She didn't expect him to carry a gun with him, so she suddenly panicked and didn't know what to do. Black White Lamb came over at this time. He smiled. Hey Gu, go home if you have anything. Why are you here doing this? But looking closely, it was not. Han Thien Lan was pointing a gun at this woman. General Han, please calm down. She stammered. Han Thien Lan was breathing more and more rapidly. The blood in his body all rushing to one place. Forgive you this time, but it's not over yet. I will definitely make you regret what happened today. Then he pushed her away and looked at Hak Bok Lam. Take me home. Did you drink spring medicine? Hey, do you need me to find someone for you? If you hold on any longer, you'll be paralyzed. Han Thien Lan of course understands this, but he doesn't have feelings for any other woman. In his mind, he only has the image of Mok Nien lying under his body, crying and begging. Take me home. He spoke with difficulty. Hak Bok Lam drove as fast as possible to take him back to the villa. The butler was waiting for him when he saw the car stopping at the gate and came over. Mok Nien, the young master is drunk, help me help him. Mok Nien heard that and ran out. Hak Bok Lam looked at her with interesting eyes. Are you deep, Mok Nien? Mok Nien nodded slightly. Yes, it's exactly the same. Take care of him carefully tonight. It's been hard for you. Mok Nien did not understand the meaning of that sentence. She helped the housekeeper help him inside. When entering the house, Black Bok Lam sat in the car and called her back. Mok Nien, tonight will be very difficult. If you can't last, just call me for help. She frowned and helped him up to the room. She looked at the butler. Please help me get hangover soup. The butler nodded and went out. Mok Nien sat down next to him. Her hand gently touched his forehead. Han Thien Lan, do you have a fever? It's so hot. He grabbed her hand and pulled her down onto the bed, her breathing still as rapid as before. Mok Nien was surprised by his actions. Before she could regain her composure, he rushed in and kissed her passionately on the lips. Mok Nien put her hand on his chest and weakly resisted. Later, the housekeeper would bring in soup. Seeing this scene, she would die of shame. Chapter 20. Honai Han Thien Lan still devoured her lips, kissing until both of their breathing was erratic before he let her go. Mok Nien placed her hand on his chest. She looked at him with dreamy eyes. Han Thien Lan, you seem to have a fever. Wait until I go call the doctor for you. Han Thien Lan looked at her curled lips. He bent his head down to kiss her lips again. His hand slid into her shirt to find her plump breasts. Mok Nien writhed. Han Thien Lan let go of her lips. He moved down to her neck, gently kissing her collarbone. Mok Nien wanted to resist, but her reason was drained by him. Tisk. Chut. Each red kiss mark left on her white neck. Mok Nien closed her eyes tightly. He reached out to loosen the tie around his neck and threw it on the floor. Next, he took her hand and placed it on his shirt button. Take them off for me. He whispered into her ear and then gently sucked under her ear. Mok Nien trembled slightly. She instinctively helped him unbutton his shirt one by one. The shirt left his body. Han Thien Lan took off her shirt, leaving only the undershirt covering her breasts. The hot blood in his body was rising. He took off her bra and bent his head down to kiss the tip of her crimson peach blossom. Tisk. Suck. He gently sucked on one side and then moved to the other side like a child enjoying breast milk. Mok Nien clutched the bed sheet tightly. This was the first time she felt the ecstasy of having sex. He took off his long pants. The underwear covered the massive thing inside. He held her hand and placed it on his penis. Ah! The warmth and tightness made Mok Nian fearfully withdraw his hand. He gently sucked her lips. I'm scared now. What should I do later when it's inside me? Her body trembled. Her teary eyes looked at him. Han Thien Lan took off the dress that covered her bottom. He put a finger into her vagina to tease her. Ah! Mok Nian couldn't help but moan softly. A warm stream of water filled his hand. He smiled with satisfaction and parted her legs. Don't look. She weakly covered it with her hand. At this time, the housekeeper brought the hangover soup. While standing in front of the door, she heard a noise, so she knew to retreat. Han Thien Lan smiled, looking at her movements. He bent down and kissed her lightly on the lips and then inserted 2 fingers into her. Mok Nian opened her mouth and panted continuously. Teasing her for a while, he turned her over. Mok Nian now knelt straight on the bed. Behind him, he lifted his penis and entered her vagina. Her back pressed against his chest. Underneath him he began to move. He reached forward and rubbed her peach blossoms. Ah! After a while, Mok Nian couldn't bear it anymore and lay down on the bed. Han Thien Lan held her legs up and brought the younger brother in again. Ah! She clutched the bedsheet tightly, her mouth constantly moaning soulfully. Pap! Puff! The sound of skin touching each other creates amorous sounds. Han Thien Lan kissed her peach blossom strongly and hugged her. He turned her around so she was on top of him. Mok Nian suddenly panicked and grabbed his hands tightly. She writhed uncomfortably, not knowing what to do. He lay underneath her but still took the initiative. He gently lifted her lower body to move in and out of her. Mok Nian lay face down on him. She opened her mouth and gently licked his chest. He panted even harder. This stupid girl. Just this small action made him almost cum. It was so dangerous. Ah! She whined. I'm so tired. Stop. Han Thien Lan turned her over, both hands clinging tightly to her hips. The bottom moved in and out like a storm. After about 30 minutes of maintaining the same position, he finished the first round. A stream of warm, milky liquid entered inside her, filling her acupuncture point. Mok Nian tiredly lay down and fell asleep. The medicine in his body was gone. But looking at the girl's whole body turning pink due to the pleasure of love, he was filled with desire again. He quickly stood up from below. He bent down to kiss her lips and then continued the second round. Next morning, Mok Nian had difficulty receiving the light from the sun. She frowned and opened her eyes. Next to him was still sleeping soundly. She looked at him stupidly for a moment. Every line on the face is perfect, impeccable. She moved her body. The pain below made her almost fall to the floor. Went into the bathroom to clean up, and when I came out the bed was empty. He must have gone back to his room. She sighed and went downstairs. Mok Nian helped the maid bring breakfast to the table. At this time, he dressed neatly and went down. She bowed her head and sat down to eat breakfast. He looked at her, then walked towards the dining table. During the meal, both were silent. Tit. 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 It's Secretary Hoang's phone. He picked up the phone. Mr. Han, the plane has 30 minutes left to take off. Are you done yet? I'm done. I'll go now. He put the phone away, pulled out a piece of tissue to wipe his mouth, then stood up. He looked at Mok Nian, who was bowing her head, and said, I went on a business trip for 2 days, took good care of myself. Mok Nian raised her head to look at him. Her eyes were a little flustered. He turned and walked out the door. You have listened to the end of chapter 20 of the series The Devil's Little Wife. Thank you for liking and subscribing to the channel and leaving a comment to support Mona's channel. See you again for the next chapter. The next chapter has a change. Hee hee.